We are back in this recording space with our friend Olivia
Hello.
and the other co founder, Cameron.
Hi.
And today we're going to just talk about general sanctuary questions that we get asked a lot, sort of a Q&A thing. We did a get to know your customers sort of thing, and we got a lot of questions from people that came into our shop. And we wanted to kind of just talk about those things and answer questions as best we can. So without further ado, let's get started.
All right. One of the big questions for the sanctuary is this a full-time job for you guys?
So I'm still a student full time in college. And as a result of that, I put like whatever free time I have towards the sanctuary, but it probably comes out to more of a part time job on my side of things.
I mean, I'm also doing part time, which is part of the reason why our sanctuary currently is open on weekends and not during the week because I used to be a teacher and I started substitute teaching this last year when we started going more into the sanctuary. So that way I had some more free time and some more control of my schedule. And I'll do some other odd jobs and things just to help out where I can. But I mean, the sanctuary is really, I would really like to be all the time, but finding ways to support the animals the best we can is always a challenge sometimes. I mean, it's just kind of the honest answer is animals don't always pay for themselves. And especially, vet bills are kind of crazy sometimes. So, yeah, we've got other things on the side that we're trying to do to best support this passion of ours.
The goal is for it to be full time, preferably as soon as possible. So that
Yeah.
way we can really just drive all of our energy into it to make sure that we can spend time with our animals all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're still working towards that point right now.
It's a hard point because any new project is going to be a little bit of a challenge at the start, but um, we're kind of working through a lot of things and trying to be the best we can and deliver products and services that we can to the community and make the community a little more wild one day at a time.
All right. Another frequently asked question is what are your animal origins? Like, where do you get them from?
So that's a great question, and it is kind of a sad one in a lot of ways. So we are based around a sort of finding animals homes sort of operation. So like sort of like a rescue thing, and we will take in animals that are looking for homes. Either their owners can't keep them any longer, or they are moving to a place that doesn't allow animals or something like that. And we will take in those animals, rehabilitate them, and then find them long-term homes. So vetting those homes for making sure that they know what they're getting into instead of just trying to push those animals out. We really, we quarantine our animals and we make sure that everyone's healthy and happy. And I would say 95% of the animals that are in the sanctuary came from a home that couldn't have them any longer. And then the other 5% are because they serve an educational value.
All right. Now that you've talked about your educational animals, what makes you decide which animal is good for educational purposes?
So while an animal is in their quarantine time, we spend a lot of time working with them and trying to get to know the animal. During that period, we're looking for if there's a really astoundingly handleable animal. A lot of times, our longer rehabilitations end up being a little more handleable towards the end of it because they learn to associate us as people with being a source of comforts, just because they came to us in so much discomforts, and we put lots of time in with them. We also look for an educational value in maybe their backstory. So a lot of times that does kind of come hand in hand with our longer rehabilitations, but not necessarily always. We have one guy named Button. He is a bearded dragon that was bit on the head as a baby. By the time he came to us, he didn't really need much for rehabilitation, but the fact that he had been bitten on the head as a baby, it caused a brain injury or something, but he never grew. So bearded dragons at 3 years old, we're looking for probably like this big of a dragon, and he's still a baby, size wise. And so that's another thing that like we couldn't find another animal like that in a million years if we like wanted to seek that out. We also look for like a unique species that can add a good like staple for their group of species. So like we have Adonis is a redfoot tortoise. He's kind of our star tortoise because we don't have any other tortoises, and it gives us a really way to discuss what makes a tortoise different from other turtles, and that sort of thing. Just like making sure that we have a staple animal, and then looking for kind of unique value within other animals that also end up joining the team.
Specifically, we have like mourning geckos in the sanctuary, and we use them to teach about genetics and how, like parthenogenesis, and even though that they're all female, they still reproduce, and teaching about invasive species and those sort of things. So animals that really fill an educational role. We have sourced those out from reputable breeders or those sort of things. But most of the time, we try to look for educational value in every animal that comes in the door. And then that will incorporate into our mission and our values.
All right, you said that educational animals need to be handleable. What do you mean by handleable? Like, what qualities do they need to possess to be handleable?
So a lot of times when an animal comes to us that isn't from the people moving or from needing to be rehabilitated or anything like that, it is because the people aren't working with their animal and they feel like they're not able to give that animal the right amount of energy. And because of that, usually when we get animals in that come from those sort of situations, they are not always friendly, it's not always the most fun. But so we've gotten an iguana that like loves to tail whip. We've gotten really feisty snakes and those sort of things. And obviously we don't want to put that into the hands of someone wanting to learn that these animals aren't scary, right? If we want to bridge the gap between the known and the unknown for people, if people are afraid of this animal already and we're trying to, show them that these animals aren't scary, that's a one-way ticket to the opposite of that. So that's one thing, is just making sure that they are calm and that they are comfortable with us and able to serve that educational value without having to worry about what else that animal's going to do. The other aspect is how flighty they are. A lot of smaller animals are quick, and that doesn't always create a recipe for good interactions with them.
Not every animal is kind of a lost cause if they come to us not super handleable. I think my favorite example of that is our blue-tongued skink, Suki. He was kind of aggressive when we first got him, just as a young blue-tongued skink that, was a lot smaller than we are. He would kind of get super reactive when we would try to interact with him. And Cole made like a t-shirt. He bought like 4 sizes larger than he wears, and then he sewed a little pouch at the bottom. And so while he was on his computer or working on homework or whatever, we would put Suki inside of his pouch. And that way he just kind of got a little acclimated to being around people and not being in danger during that time. And so over the course of a few months, I think it was, just being exposed to people and coming to realize that we weren't here to hurt him, he got a lot more comfortable with us. And so then when we did want to really make sure that he was handleable, he was fine with us by that point. And now he loves hanging out in pouches and hoodies and like the hood on the back of a sweatshirt. He finds a lot of comfort in those spaces, and a lot of times he'll seek it out if he sees that somebody's wearing it, which is really cool, just to like have that transition of a guy who would kind of huff at us all the time to now wanting to hang out in the same kind of space with people. We do that with a lot of animals in one capacity or another, but if we think that they have that value, but we want them to be more handleable, then a lot of it is just slow exposure and kind of creating this safe space in people that are present but not causing pain. So
Animals are each an individual, and so that's a big thing, is not just, judging them on the species, but also on, how this individual handles everything. And we really try to get to know them and their personality. Every single animal we have, I could tell you just about all the time what they're going to try to do as soon as they're in your hands. Maisie, we have a corn snake that likes to explore. That's her big thing. But with that, sometimes she likes to try to go up people's sleeves or in their shirt pockets or those sort of things because she just wants to see what's around. And so that's another aspect, is making sure that we know our animals really, really well before we ever put that animal in someone else's hands. We try to make the unpredictable as predictable as possible.
I'd say we have probably a 95% accuracy in reading our animals. And so sometimes we'll be like, oh, just wait, I'm going to open up the enclosure and this animal's going to be right here. And then that's the one time that we're in that 5%. We open up the enclosure and they're not in that spot. It's always kind of fun to be like, oh, and now they're making me look like a liar. But the reality is we have gotten to the point of knowing our animals at least 95% accuracy and being able to like read their body language and understand their habits.
The animals will keep you on edge, though. They will keep you guessing. And sometimes the animal's behavior will change as they grow too. So they'll sort of adapt to their environment and they'll learn things that they like more than other things. And it's always a fun challenge to work with them and get to know them on a deeper level.
So with taking in a wide variety of animals and not all of them coming from a happy, healthy home, how do you keep them happy and healthy or know that they are?
So reptiles tend to be pretty good at showing their symptoms if it's later into an issue. But early on in not feeling well, they don't really reveal a whole lot because doing that in the wild puts them at a higher risk for being predated on. And so what we'll see is it's really about looking for small signs very early on. If they come to us and they're already showing symptoms, we know that it's serious enough that we need to take action. If that's a respiratory infection and we're seeing a little bit of mucus, by the point that there's mucus, it's substantial enough to take them to the vet and get them on a prescription right away. But other times it's just like the slightest little whistle on their breath, and that means that we should adjust humidity before it progresses to a full-fledged respiratory infection. And so really paying attention to like those key signs that are mostly universal across reptiles, but understanding just how it'll change a little bit within species.
The other aspect of that is that every individual will have different needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could, have 100 ball pythons that like this type of setup, this type of humidity and those sort of things. And we'll have one that is used to a more humid environment because of where it was kept or those sort of things. And so the big problem when you take in an animal and you switch up its setup, especially when you're moving them into quarantine, and we usually have them on like paper towels and those sort of things, that way we can monitor if they have mites or something like that. If you switch up their care very quickly, sometimes it does a number on their system. Anytime any animal has big changes in their environment, it's just a recipe for, keeping a little bit of a closer eye. And then the other aspect is we try to get to know as much information as we can before an animal comes through our doors. So if we know that an animal, like a bearded dragon, was kept in a 20-gallon with no UVB and no supplements, then we know what the starting point is. And we try to, as soon as we take that animal in, before that animal comes into the doors, we already have a setup that is addressing a lot of those concerns, or looking to mitigate any of the already, progressing damage is.
Mhm.
So it is a little bit of a challenge that way, but we try our best to mitigate that really early on and nipping any problem in the bud before it's a big problem. But the other thing is, yeah, reptiles hide things very well. And so even the little things, just keep an eye out for. Something as simple as, um, an animal walking a little bit differently one day. Don't just blow it off. Like look into it. Check those things, and making sure that we're addressing concerns early, because if we wait, then it becomes a lot harder to address. Unfortunately, sometimes by the time they get to us, it has already progressed to a scary point. But we've been pretty fortunate overall. But sometimes it's a challenge, and that's just the nature of what we do.
I'd say that it also makes abandonment cases more difficult because we aren't able to get all of that background information from the owner. Pretty recently, we had to make a trip back to my hometown for an abandoned iguana, and we got to see what that iguana's original setup was, just like right inside the house where it was left. But we also don't necessarily know what's going on internally based on how the care was handled on the day-to-day, because we aren't able to ask that information to anybody. It's largely just going to have to be touch and go, probably take him into the vet and get him checked out so that we can understand what our baseline is, because we don't have that same foundation of information that we do with other animals.
For all we know, he could be getting cat food and twigs from outside. Like, we don't know what that animal is being fed. We don't know how much that animal has been handled, those sort of things. And so it is a little bit scary. Just being adaptable with them is the name of the game.
Where are some good places to find reliable information for a pet owner or for yourselves?
I think the best advice I have is to cross-reference a lot of different sites. Obviously, the more kept animals are going to have a lot more sites, right? A lot more information out there, and some of it's good, and some of it's pretty outdated, and that's just the thing that it is. Our rule of thumb is to check as much as we can, but Reptifiles is a source that usually has the most up to date and the most like the pinnacle of care for each animal, and they do really, really good work with getting information that's reliable and up to date and reviewed and everything.
And
Instead of
cross-referencing before putting it on the site.
exactly, just because information is out there doesn't always mean it's right. There's a learning curve right at the start of reptiles. Reptiles are different than any other animal you've ever kept, and sometimes people are pushed away because they don't know things. And I don't think that's the way to make more information out there. I think we should encourage those people to learn and to find information. And I think the big thing is not just giving them the information, but giving them the way to find that information.
I feel like finding information for reptiles in the industry is kind of like you don't know what you don't know until you know that you don't know it. And so even like us, with the several animals we have, we still make adjustments to the care of some animals occasionally. And we're constantly asking questions and looking to refine whatever our care standards are for the animals we have. Like we took on an intern lately who has a lot of experience with night anoles, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I love these guys. I always gave mine fruit and they loved it." And we were like, "That's not something that we were aware they could do." So then we didn't know that fruit was part of a night anoles diet, and so we went in and did some digging, found lots of like peer-reviewed stuff about them having a substantial amount of fruit in their wild diets. And so knowing that, we've started incorporating that into Monty's diet, and really just like not turning away information that's given to you, but just verifying it before implementing it has been huge, and we still do it all the time.
Yeah, taking information with a grain of salt. Like, take the information and then
Double check it.
double check it. And if you're finding the same stuff, it's usually probably good information. But the other thing is, and this is a big challenge for us, especially, every animal's an individual. So like Button, right? Even though he's a, 2-year-old bearded dragon, he obviously isn't the size of a 2-year-old bearded dragon. He's only a little guy. So if I looked up how to take care of a 2-year-old bearded dragon, I would get far different than what his care actually requires. So getting to know your animal, its behaviors, and its care is way more valuable than anything anyone else could provide. Our rule of thumb is to go above and beyond, and then if it is not what that animal needs, then we can, taper it to where they need to.
So if people had questions about how to care for animals, could they shoot you guys messages about that? And where should they do that at?
We answer questions all the time. Most often we receive those through text messages, which our business card has our personal cell phone numbers on it. Small business things. We have our Facebook posts. You can shoot us a message on Messenger and Instagram DMs.
Or just as a comment too. We're pretty good about answering
leaving comments on posts as well. We'll answer emails, and then there's also a form or like chat box on our website. So we try to stay up to date on all of those, and if we see a message come in from any of those platforms, then we answer it as quickly as we can.
Or the other thing is, if you're local, we've had people stop in and just get to know everything they can about an animal before they bring it home. But we're happy to answer questions if you're in town too. So
thank you guys so much for tuning into the video. We love answering questions for folks, and hope that you gained something from some of our most frequently asked questions. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned for other videos that we'll be posting.
if you have any more questions, don't be afraid to leave them in the comment section below. And we'll see you guys next time.